January 30th, 1933. The fate of an entire nation shifts in a single moment as Adolf Hitler seizes the German chancellorship, crushing democracy beneath the iron boots of the Nazi regime. Behind his rise stands a shadowy army of 3 million stormtroopers, the SA, the brown shirts, men whose brutal street violence paved Hitler's bloody road to power. But within 2 years, Hitler will turn on them. One night, one order, and the very men who carried him to power are shot dead in their beds. Among the executed is a man named Karl Ernst, a nightclub bouncer who clawed his way to the top of Hitler's war machine. A ruthless SA commander who helped build the Nazi regime with his own hands, and then was murdered by it. How does a man rise from nothing to control the stormtroopers of Germany's capital? What did he do to get there? And why did the Führer he was loyal to until his last breath order him killed? If you think these victims deserve to be remembered, subscribe to the Execution Room now. Don't let their voices vanish into history. Karl Ernst was born on September 1st, 1904, in the grimy working-class districts of Berlin. He came into the world with nothing, no privilege, no connections, no safety net. His father was a former cavalryman who had survived the First World War only to end up working as a hired bodyguard for Friedrich Flick, one of Germany's most powerful and ruthless industrialists, a man whose weapons factories would later help fuel Hitler's entire war machine. Young Karl's education ended at elementary school. Between 1918 and 1921, he scraped through a commercial apprenticeship, learning the basics of the export trade. But sitting behind a desk wasn't for him. He moved from job to job, hotel bellboy, commercial clerk, and then, most tellingly, a bouncer at a gay nightclub in Berlin's underground scene. That last job would later be used as a weapon against him. Whispers about his personal life would follow him for the rest of his short life, right up to the moment he was shot. In 1923, as Germany's economy collapsed into chaos and hyperinflation turned the streets into battlegrounds, Ernst found what he had been looking for. He joined the SA, the Sturmabteilung, Hitler's paramilitary terror force. The SA grew out of the Freikorps, the roaming bands of First World War veterans who refused to accept Germany's humiliating defeat. By 1921, roughly 400,000 men had poured into these violent groups, so fueling street battles against communists and anyone they blamed for Germany's collapse. They called themselves the Gymnastics and Sports Division at first, but the name didn't last. The brown shirts became their uniform. Violence became their language. Their mission was simple: protect Hitler, crush his enemies, enforce Nazi orders with fists, clubs, and bullets. Their first big operation ended in disaster. On the night of November 8th to 9th, 1923, Hitler led his brown shirts through the streets of Munich in what became known as the Beer Hall Putsch. He wanted to overthrow the German government by force. Munich police met them with gunfire. 16 stormtroopers and 4 officers died in the shootout. Hitler was arrested, convicted of treason, and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He served barely 8 months. When he walked out, so the SA came back stronger than ever. In 1926, just 6,000 stormtroopers marched at Weimar. By 1930, that number had exploded to 60,000. The Great Depression poured fuel on the fire. Desperate, unemployed men flooded the SA's ranks by the hundreds of thousands. By January 1931, there were 77,000 members. By November, 221,000. By August 1932, 445,000. And by April 1934, after Hitler seized the chancellorship, the SA stood at a staggering 3 million men, larger than Germany's entire professional military. Karl Ernst rode this violent wave all the way to the top. From 1927 to 1931, he worked at the SA's Supreme Leadership Headquarters in Munich. His real opportunity came during an internal SA rebellion in Berlin, known as the Stenners Revolt. When the dust settled and loyalties were sorted out, Ernst landed on the right side. Only in April 1931, he was promoted to adjutant of the Berlin SA and officially joined the Nazi Party. Member number 446,153. As adjutant, Ernst became the right-hand man to Wolf Heinrich Graf von Helldorf, commander of Berlin's stormtroopers. Together, they wasted no time. On the evening of September 12, 1931, during Jewish New Year celebrations, Ernst and Helldorf sent roughly 1,000 SA thugs onto the Kurfürstendamm, one of Berlin's most famous boulevards. They attacked Jews leaving synagogue. They beat anyone they considered an enemy. They screamed, "Jews die," and beat the Jews dead in the streets while civilians ran for their lives. Authorities charged both men with breach of peace. Ernst went into hiding at first. He was defended in court by Roland Freisler and Hans Frank, two lawyers who would later become notorious Nazi executioners themselves. Both men received 6-month prison sentences in November 1931. By February 1932, the conviction was overturned. Ernst paid a fine and walked free. But there was something else growing beneath the surface. Something that would eventually be used to destroy the SA from the inside. Ernst Röhm, the SA's powerful chief of staff, was a scarred First World War veteran who had transformed the SA into a massive quasi-military force. He had big ambitions. He wanted the SA to absorb the German army, with himself as supreme commander. But Röhm carried a vulnerability that his enemies would exploit without mercy. He was openly homosexual. In 1931, social democratic newspapers published private letters in which Röhm described his own sexuality directly. In the scandal tore through Nazi ranks. And Röhm was not alone. Many SA leaders shared his orientation, including his deputy Edmund Heiners and Karl Ernst himself. Ernst's relationship with Paul Röhrbein, a wealthy man connected to Röhm who wasn't even a party member, became Berlin SA gossip. His enemies mockingly called him Fräulein Röhrbein, claiming he had slept his way to his position. Rumors about a so-called triple alliance between Röhm, Röhrbein and Ernst circulated constantly, with critics calling it a homosexual clique running Berlin's stormtroopers. On June 26, 1931, a Nazi named Walter Bergmann confronted Ernst and Röhrbein together at a Berlin pub. He screamed at them in front of everyone. "Look at these parasites on the party, these male prostitutes. Oh, these damn sodomizers who let the party's reputation go to hell." Ernst swore on his honor he wasn't homosexual. The whispers never stopped. Ernst was also linked to orgies aboard the yacht of Erich Hanussen, a Jewish mystic and con artist who had loaned enormous sums of money to high-ranking Nazis. Hanussen's generosity bought him nothing in the end. Despite the financial favors he had done for men like Ernst, Ernst would later participate in Hanussen's murder in 1933. A cold and calculated betrayal. By December 1931, Ernst commanded the reorganized SA group Berlin-Brandenburg. On March 1, 1933, he was promoted to SA Gruppenführer. And by March 15th, he replaced Helldorf as the commander of all SA forces in Berlin and Brandenburg. Every stormtrooper in Germany's capital answered to him. He was also elected to the Reichstag multiple times between July 1932 and November 1933, representing Berlin. In August 1933, Hermann Göring personally appointed him to the prestigious Prussian State Council. A bouncer from Berlin's underground had become one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany. Then came the Reichstag fire. On February 27, 1933, flames tore through Germany's parliament building. The Nazis immediately blamed the communists, claiming it was the opening move in a violent revolution. Hitler used the crisis to push through the Reichstag fire decree, a law that wiped out constitutional protections in a single stroke. Freedom of assembly, gone. Freedom of speech, gone. Freedom of the press, gone. Police could now arrest anyone for any reason, without cause. It was the legal doorway to total Nazi dictatorship. One, and some historians believe Karl Ernst helped open it. There are accounts suggesting Ernst led a small SA squad through underground passages from the Reichstag president's palace into the building itself, setting the fire that night. The majority of historians believe a Dutch communist named Marinus van der Lubbe acted alone. But the question has never been fully closed. What is not in question is what happened next. By 1934, the SA had become a problem. 3 million members. A reputation for drunken street violence. Homosexuality scandals embarrassing Hitler at every turn in his negotiations with Germany's conservative establishment. And Röhm openly calling for the army to be folded into the SA, with himself in command. President Paul von Hindenburg and Vice-Chancellor Franz von Papen gave Hitler a direct warning. To control your revolutionary elements or face a military coup and martial law, Hitler had a choice to make. His old ally, Röhm and the SA, or the traditional power brokers who controlled Germany's army and industrial machine. He chose the power brokers. Heinrich Himmler and Reinhard Heydrich, the leaders of the SS, the SA's bitter rival organization, saw their opening. In April 1934, they began working with Hermann Göring to fabricate evidence. Their claim was that Röhm had accepted 12 million Reichsmarks from France, roughly $60 million today, to overthrow Hitler. It was a lie built from forged documents. On June 24th, SS officers were shown the falsified evidence. Hitler authorized the purge. Himmler, Heydrich, and Göring put together their death lists. Targets inside the SA, targets outside it, anyone they wanted gone. And the night of the long knives was about to begin. If understanding history matters to you, if their stories deserve to be heard, subscribe to the Execution Room right now. Share this video. Make sure the next generation knows what really happened. On June 28, 1934, Hitler ordered Röhm to summon all top SA leaders to Bad Wiessee, a quiet Bavarian spa resort. It was a trap. On the morning of June 30th, SS units commanded by Theodor Eicke, commandant of Dachau concentration camp, raided the resort. They arrested Röhm and his officers while many were still asleep. They were taken to Stadelheim prison in Munich, where SS firing squads shot most of them on the spot. Hitler hesitated over Röhm's fate. July 1st, he finally gave the order. Eicke walked into Röhm's cell personally and shot him dead. The evidence suggests Röhm remained loyal to Hitler until the very end. The betrayal was entirely one-sided. The killings spread across Germany. SA leaders were shot nationwide, but the SS didn't stop there. They used the chaos to settle scores far beyond the SA. General Kurt von Schleicher, Hitler's predecessor as Chancellor, was gunned down at his home. Conservative critics, right-wing nationalists, former allies who had become inconvenient, all of them killed. Between June 30th and July 2nd, at least 90 people were murdered. Some estimates put the number at 200 or more. Karl Ernst's turn came on the morning of June 30th. He didn't see it coming. Ernst was at Bremerhaven with his new bride about to board a ship bound for Madeira. His honeymoon. His friend Martin Kurzboom, who had paid for the voyage, was with them. Their bags were packed, and the ship was waiting. Then an arrest warrant arrived from Berlin. Ernst was seized on the dock, beaten badly. Handed over to an SS commando unit led by Kurt Gildisch, one of Hitler's personal bodyguards. Gildish's men tortured and interrogated him. They flew him to Berlin on a special plane, landing at Tempelhof Airport, and dragged him to SS barracks. He was 29 years old. On June 30th, 1934, Karl Ernst faced a firing squad made up of members of the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, Hitler's own elite personal bodyguard unit. His death was recorded at 9:37 in the morning. Radio broadcasts announced his execution hours before it actually happened. Even at the very end, Ernst did not understand. He believed he was the victim of a terrible mistake, that someone had gotten it wrong, that the Führer would fix it if he only knew. And his final act was a Nazi salute. He died with loyalty on his lips for the man who had ordered him killed. His wife was not harmed. She was released from protective custody on July 14, 1934, and lived in Berlin until her death in 1982. On July 13, 1934, Hitler stood before the Reichstag and justified the massacre. He claimed Röhm, Schleicher, and the others were traitors working for France. The German parliament retroactively declared every killing legal, and just weeks later, it got worse. On August 1st, 1934, one day before President Hindenburg's death, Hitler's cabinet passed a law merging the presidency and the chancellorship under a single title, Führer. At 9 in the morning on August 2nd, 1934, the 87-year-old Hindenburg died at his estate in East Prussia. Within hours, Hitler declared himself Führer of Germany. Absolute power. No checks, no limits, no one left to say no. The German army swore a personal oath of unconditional obedience. Not to Germany, not to the Constitution, to Hitler alone. On August 19th, a national referendum approved the merger. No one mourned Karl Ernst. His story is not a simple one. He was not an innocent man. He beat people in the streets. He helped orchestrate terror against Jewish communities. He participated in murder. He helped build the very machine that destroyed him. But his story tells us something important, something that goes beyond him. The Night of the Long Knives showed the world exactly what kind of regime Nazi Germany was. It showed that loyalty meant nothing, that usefulness had an expiration date, that the men who carried Hitler to power, who did his dirty work, who terrorized his enemies and soaked Germany's streets in blood, those same men would be shot the moment they became inconvenient. Karl Ernst gave everything to a regime that used him up and threw him away. He died giving a salute to the man who signed his death warrant. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a promotion, a uniform, a movement that promises you belonging and purpose and power. And by the time you realize what you've actually signed up for, it's already too late to walk away. Subscribe to The Execution Room. Share this story. These are the secrets that textbooks won't teach you. We uncover the darkest corners of World War II, one truth at a time. Turn on notifications and join us as we pull back the curtain on history.